So in this way, now today we are going to talk. The questions: it is possible to free would be freedom from the suffering, and the answer is because suffering without cause and without conditions, then is not possible. But that is not the case. Suffering we found with the cause and with the conditions very clearly and logically. So therefore, when you can stop, or when you have the way how to avoid the origination of the suffering, then it will be stopping the fully repentant result suffering itself. So in this way, now we're going to talk about the noble truth of cessation. What is the object of cessation? How to stopping the cessation, and the stopping to where? There's three different kinds. Maybe we just research. So, what is the object of cessation? That we mentioned this previous the few days. This all is the past talk is kind about the object of the cessation, which mentions suffering and the origination of the suffering. These two, the cause and the effect, the one pairs of the cause and the effect. That is the object of cessation. Because nobody wants to experience of suffering, and nobody wants to experience unpleasant feelings. So everybody wants to become achievement state of ultimate peace and ultimate enjoyment. So that's why we say the suffering and the origination is as an object of the cessation. That's very clear. So now is this object of the cessation stopping to where? Stopping to where? The object of cessation, the object of the suffering and the origination must be stopped into the Dharma sphere, the sphere of suchness. We can say suchness sphere. Or means is stopping into the reality nature of emptiness. That is the Dharma sphere. Or stopping into the true nature of our mind. And then is how we can how can we stop into the Dharma sphere, the object of the abandonment, suffering, and the origination. That answer is depend to the. We need to understand the fourth noble truth. We will talk tomorrow more details. The noble truth of path. We need to rely on the path for how, if you want to know how to stopping. But the questions, it is possible to stop the suffering and the origination of suffering. It's very, very possible from the logic and from the reasoning, and also by the Buddha taught us, says. The cessation means is Thakpa Nursam Zapayin, and that the Ayamitria text says. Or other hand, we can say, Ledan Yumo Zapitar, Ledan Yumo Namtole, Ledan Tuli Tubane, Tombayin Yengaburger. So one verse just I quote from the Nagarjuna text, the root wisdom text, but it says, so is it the cessation is point is the same meaning, different word we can say stopping, or other hand we can say liberation, or we can say enlightenment. We can say Nirvana, same achievement state of Nirvana. All is one point meaning and different words, cessation. So therefore, Nirvana is, Buddha says, Nirvana is as peace. Why? Because when you have freedom, or when you will be stopping completely of the origination of karma, we mentioned yesterday, and the origination of delusions. That is Nirvana. That means is liberation or liberated. Tarpa, Tibetan word, is the Nirvana, or the liberation, is when you complete it to exhaustion about of karma and about of delusion. That is cessation, actually. So in this way, now, how can you stop of these two, the origination of karma and origination of delusion? We need to know is performed. These two aspects, origination is mainly from perception or namtole. In the text, this says. This means is that performed from the wrong perception, or misconception mind, is at the root of delusion and karma. So therefore, if you want freedom from the delusion and karma, then you must need to avoid the misconception mind, or misunderstanding mind, or the wrong perception. We need to stop the conceptuality mind, or the concept of the wrong perception mind. We need to stop, which means is the wrong perception is apprehending to the opposite of the reality, the ordinary perception. I mentioned before, nature is of the samsara is impermanent, but we apprehending to permanent. That is wrong perception. And the nature, the reality, the nature of samsara, or the aggregates, or the existent nature is unpleasant object, actually. But we are apprehending to a pleasant object. That is wrong perception. The nature of samsara and the nature of self is as empty, actually, but we are apprehending to grasping self inherently of the phenomena, and we grasping to inherently of the person too. So that is a wrong perception. And then the nature of person is a selflessness, actually, the reality of person. It's egoless, selflessness of person. That is the nature, the truth. But ordinary perceptions, we also apprehending to grasping and self-existent and inherently. That is wrong perception. That is a misconception. So all those such and such, we can say, namto, or perception, ordinary people's perception mind. So that is the root of the delusions. The delusion is at the root of karma. Karma is at the root of samsara and the suffering we mentioned yesterday, more detail. So in this way now, again, another question, it is possible to stop the wrong perception? It is possible to avoid of the misconception? Ordinary people's? It's very possible. Because in the text says, which means is you can avoid the wrong perception by the antidote of emptiness, recognition of emptiness, the wisdom mind of wisdom of emptiness is the antidote to the wrong perception mind, the wisdom mind, which means is the wisdom, emptiness of selflessness self, an antidote, the wisdom of emptiness of selflessness of phenomena. That is pure wisdom. So when you will be realization, true nature, emptiness of self and phenomena, then you will be freedom from wrong perception. Because the opposite of wrong perception is as wisdom. The wisdom mind is as the opposite of wrong perception. The understanding of the reality is at the contrary, the opposite of misunderstanding of the phenomena. So that is why if you follow the wisdom of hearing, emptiness, and follow the wisdom, focus on the wisdom of contemplation of emptiness, the wisdom of contemplation, and if you meditate or practice with the wisdom of the meditation of emptiness, and then gradually will be one day can realization directly better your primordial wisdom mind. So that is a cessation. Stopping is coming. Because you can stop the root of samsara, which is ignorant. You can stop ignorant by the wisdom mind. Because when you understand the reality, not only understand, but on top you need to contemplation, not only, but you need to meditate, not only, but finally you need to realization directly the true nature. So first understand clearly this through the three wisdom of hearing, contemplation, and meditation. And then will be experience of the emptiness of self and phenomena. At the end, on top of these first two stages, you will be realization, true nature, emptiness, better your primordial wisdom. That moment, you will be completely freedom from wrong perception and misunderstanding. Means is freedom from obscuration of ignorance. And then is you have opportunity chance will be completely freedom from the delusion, which is desire, anger, ignorance, attachment, so forth. And when you will be completely freedom of the obscuration of delusions, and then you will be freedom from obscuration of karma, the contaminated karma. When you will be completely freedom from the contaminated karma, and then you will be freedom from the suffering of samsara and the faults of samsara. That is stopping. That means it's a noble truth or cessation is true. That truth is the possibility. The truth is from noble beings, supreme beings, Arya beings, omniscient beings. They understand clearly. We also will be understand, follow the logic and reason, valid cognitions. Then you can because we're talking now follow of the logic. We're talking about of the valid cognitive way. So therefore, even ordinary people, we can understand if you follow the logic. Then, the end you can understand. Therefore, very possible this noble truth of cessation, the stopping.